The First Age was a time of many great kingdoms, Hithlum, Doriath, Nargothrond, but perhaps no kingdom was more famous than Gondolin, which was built in the likeness of the city of Tirion in Aman, and even contained imitations of the two trees of Valinor. But Gondolin is perhaps most famous for the fact that it was a completely hidden city, closed off from the outside world, which allowed it to outlast every other kingdom in Beleriand. So in this video, we ask the question, why was Gondolin a hidden city? What was the end goal of the city? And was it achieved? One of the most important concepts of the First Age is the Doom of Mandos. Here is the first relevant half of it. Tears unnumbered ye shall shed, and the Valar will fence Valinor against you and shut you out, so that not even the echo of your lamentation shall pass over the mountains. On the house of Feanor the wrath of the Valar lieth from the west unto the uttermost east, and upon all that will follow them it shall be laid also. Their oath shall drive them, and yet betray them, and ever snatch away the very treasures that they have sworn to pursue. To evil end shall all things turn that they begin well, and by treason of kin unto kin, and the fear of treason, shall this come to pass. The dispossessed shall they ever be, forever. Basically, to summarize, the Doom of Mandos was both a prophecy and a curse. It was a prophecy in the sense that all of those who went to Middle-earth to fight Morgoth would be doomed. They would not be able to defeat Morgoth conventionally, and would ultimately lose the war. Hence the tears unnumbered ye shall shed. The curse was that this doom applied to all of those who took part in the rebellion of the Noldor, mainly the House of Feanor, but also the House of Fingolfin and those of the House of Finarfin who did not repent. They would be shut out from Valinor and would be left to their fate. Okay, so what does this have to do with Gondolin? Well, everything. By the year 50 of the First Age, the Noldor had gotten to work establishing their realms in Beleriand. At the time, Turgon, the second son of Fingolfin, was dwelling in his city of Vinyamar, built in Nevrast along the coast of the sea. He decided he wished to reunite and travel with his friend, Finrod, the leader of the House of Finarfin, who was dwelling at Tol Sirion in the Pass of Sirion. Together, they travelled south along the River Sirion to a place called the Meres of Twilight, a place of pools and marshes. There they rested, and while they slept, the Valar Ulmo came up the river and placed heavy dreams upon them. While the dreams aren't explicitly described, it's clear that they weren't pleasant, possibly showing a vision of the future where Morgoth had defeated the elves and had overrun Beleriand. They both awoke full of doubt and disquiet, and while neither spoke of their dream to the other, it's pretty clear that they had the same dream. Shortly afterwards, both Turgon and Finrod would often wander alone in untrodden lands, looking for places of hidden strength where one could establish a refuge should Morgoth burst forth from Angband once again. Finrod found what he sought first. While a guest in Doriath, he opened up about his dreams to King Thingol, and Thingol helped him by describing a location of gorges and caves at the River Narog. When Finrod left Doriath, Thingol gave him guides and took him to the location. It was perfect for Finrod, and with the help of the Dwarves of the Blue Mountains, he began constructing his new city, Nargothrond. While this video is about Gondolin, I would like to point out that Nargothrond was similar to Gondolin in the sense that it was also a hidden city, although not to the same extent as Gondolin. However, Finrod and Nargothrond were not Ulmo's pet project in the same way that Turgon and Gondolin were. Okay, back to Turgon. He had less success than Finrod. He wanted to build a city in the likeness of Tirion in Eldamar, but he could not find a suitable location. So in 53, Ulmo helped Turgon out once again, appearing to him and bidding him to go to the Vale of Sirion alone. Once there, Ulmo guided him through a secret tunnel through the encircling mountains, and there he would discover the Vale of Tumladen. In the centre of Tumladen was a hill of stone, and it was there that Turgon decided he would be able to build his Tirion replica. Turgon didn't act at first, but in 60, Morgoth launched a surprise attack on Beleriand. This was the Dagor Aglareb, and although it was a total disaster for Morgoth, it reminded the princes of the Noldor that they would not be safe as long as Morgoth lurked in Angband. Knowing that they lacked the strength to assault Morgoth's fortress, the Noldor instead decided to besiege it, starting the near 400-year-long siege of Angband, a time in which Beleriand mostly experienced peace and prosperity. Turgon, however, had other ideas. Morgoth's attack reminded him of the disturbing dreams that Ulmo had placed upon him, so his thoughts returned to the Vale of Tumladen. In 64, he decided to lead his most skilled builders and craftsmen to Tumladen, and there they began the construction of Gondolin. Due to being done in secret and with limited manpower, this took many years, and during this time, Turgon continued to live in Vinyamar. But in 116, Gondolin was finally completed, and Turgon led his people to the newly constructed city, and he would become the King of Gondolin. But before Turgon left, Ulmo gave him a final important warning. "Now thou shalt go at last to Gondolin, Turgon, and I will maintain my power in the Vale of Sirion and in all the waters therein, so that none shall mark thy going, nor shall any find there the hidden entrance against thy will. Longest of all the realms of the Eldali shall Gondolin stand against Melkor. But love not too well the work of thy hands and the devices of thy heart, and remember that the true hope of the Noldor lieth in the west and cometh from the sea." Ulmo then reminded Turgon that he too was under the doom of Mandos, but if the doom was drawing near, then Ulmo would send him one final warning. "Thus it may come to pass that the curse of the Noldor shall find thee too the end, and treason awake within thy walls. Then they shall be in peril of fire. But if this peril draweth nigh indeed, then even from Nevrast one shall come to warn thee, and from him beyond ruin and fire hope shall be born for elves and men. Leave therefore in this house arms and a sword, that in years to come he may find them, and thus shalt thou know him, and not be deceived." It's all a little bit grim. While Gondolin was a magical, wondrous place, the reason for its construction is that even in the early days of the Siege of Angband, when Beleriand was flourishing, Turgon was being reminded that the Noldor and their allies were ultimately doomed. The Siege of Angband would fail, and then Morgoth would destroy his enemies one by one. The whole idea of Gondolin was that its secret, defensible location would allow it to outlast everyone else. But even then, Ulmo was clear in his warning. Don't love the work of your hands too much, because not even Gondolin would be safe in the end. It really is a declaration of, have fun while it lasts, because in the end, this is going to suck. You can see how this weighs heavily on Turgon as the First Age progresses. After the Battle of Sudden Flame in 455, in which the Siege of Angband is broken, Turgon believes that it's the beginning of the end. He sends several companies of his people to the havens of Sirion and the Isle of Balar to construct ships and set sail into the west to see if they can receive help. The errand fails, none of the messengers reach Valinor, and only a few of the ships return. After this fails, Turgon momentarily abandons his secrecy. At the Battle of Unnumbered Tears in 472, he leads forth 10,000 of his own soldiers, hoping to help the Union of Maedhros re-establish the Siege of Angband. If he can't reach Valinor, then he can at least hope to help delay Morgoth's victory. But the battle is a disaster. While Turgon manages to escape into Gondolin with most of his army, the power of the Noldor and the Edain is broken, and the outcome of the war is no longer in doubt. Morgoth's forces invade Beleriand in greater numbers, and the following year, he destroys the Falas. At this point, it's clear that Turgon is desperate. After the destruction of the Falas, he dispatches more messengers to the mouths of Sirion, and with Círdan's help, 7 more ships are constructed. Over the course of the next 2 decades, these ships are dispatched into the west, but once again, all of them fail to reach Valinor, and from these expeditions there's only a single survivor. This is Voronwë, and it's he who guides Tuor to Gondolin. Tuor, of the House of Hador, is the long-awaited messenger that Ulmo warned Turgon about. He comes to Gondolin in 495 and delivers Ulmo's message. But in the decades since the Battle of Unnumbered Tears, Turgon has grown proud and is pretty much in denial by this point. He's tried to beg forgiveness from the West and has failed. He's tried to help directly in the war against Morgoth and he has failed. From the outside world, he hears only terrible news of the fall of Nargothrond and the fall of Doriath. His people are content in their hidden city, his army is still strong. So when Tuor arrives with Ulmo's message, in the end, Turgon rejects the council. Although everything from the doom of Mandos has come to pass, Turgon hopes that, against all hope, the strength and secrecy of his people might allow Gondolin to outlast it. But what Turgon does heed is Ulmo's old warning that treason would awake within his walls. As a result, he blocks the entrance to Tumladen and does not send forth any more spies or messengers from Gondolin, and forbids any of his people from passing the inner hills of the encircling mountains. Unfortunately for Turgon, none of this matters, because the events that would lead to the fall of Gondolin had already been set in motion, and to be fair to Turgon, it would have been impossible for him to recognise and stop it at this point. First, his nephew, Maeglin, had darkness in his heart, inherited from his father Eol. Second, Hurin, who had once been brought to Gondolin, unwittingly revealed the rough area of Gondolin's location by shouting for Turgon near the encircling mountains. Morgoth's spies were observing. Third, Maeglin did not like Tuor, and he especially loathed that Tuor ended up marrying Idril, Turgon's daughter. This resulted in him being more rebellious, and he disobeyed the king's orders by mining beyond the hills. There, he was captured by orcs, drawn to the location by Hurin's shouts. He was brought before Morgoth, and then he betrayed the location of the city. So in the end, the events of Turgon's dream come to pass, and Gondolin does not escape the doom of Mandos. In 410, the city is destroyed, Turgon is killed, and its survivors end up escaping to the mouths of Sirion, thanks to Idril's foresight in building a secret tunnel out of the city, and Glorfindel's sacrifice while fighting a Balrog. But while Turgon and his city do not outlast the doom of Mandos, some of his decisions do yield results. The main one is allowing the marriage between Tuor and Idril. From them would come Eärendil, and it's Eärendil who would sail into the west and save Middle-earth. I think one has to feel sorry for Turgon. He followed Ulmo's instructions, he closed himself from the outside world, watching from his secret kingdom as his friends and family died around him. He tried to ask the West for forgiveness, he tried to delay the inevitable by marching out to fight. When Ulmo's message finally arrived, you can see why it was so difficult. Do you stay in Gondolin? Sure, the doom of Mandos has come to pass so far, but the city is strong, safe, and has remained secret. Or do you abandon the city? Sure, it's what Ulmo advises, but where do you go? How do you get there? How do you convince your people to leave? And what's actually going to change? You've already tried to get to the west, and that's only failed. In the end, I guess, despite the fact that Turgon died, and so did most of his people, Gondolin still did succeed in a way. I already mentioned Eärendil, the hero of the First Age who was born in Gondolin, but even ignoring that, the city had decades of peace when the rest of Beleriand was already in chaos. When you consider how bad things were in Beleriand, even if Gondolin still too ultimately ended in fire and ruin, I think anyone would have counted themselves lucky to live there. Thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed it or at least found it interesting. One interesting thing to consider about Gondolin is how the other princes reacted. How did they feel about Turgon suddenly abandoning his city and disappearing with tens of thousands or even 100,000 people? They definitely knew Turgon was still around somewhere, because he did occasionally send out messengers, so I wonder if they ever suspected the reason behind him hiding. Anyway, cheers, farewell, and remember, Gondolin was basically a nice North Korea. I apologize to any of my North Korean fans.